Interpretation of Chitra Nakshatra. When the moon is placed in Chitra Nakshatra and supported by benefics like Venus or Jupiter, it produces a dynamic emotional personality, driven by a desire to create, perfect, and shine. Ruled by Mars and symbolized by the celestial architect's jewel, Chitra stands for design, precision, and charismatic construction. A benefic moon here gives the native emotional vibrancy, aesthetic sensitivity, and the power to transform ideas into beautiful forms. If afflicted by Saturn, Rahu, or Ketu, the moon in Chitra may lead to vanity, restlessness, or emotional volatility disguised as perfectionism. Venus in Chitra enhances charm, grace, and sensual magnetism, especially when placed in angular or trinal houses and supported by Mars or Jupiter. Venus here creates artistic architects, stylish reformers, or seductive personalities with refined taste and an eye for visual harmony. However, if afflicted, especially by Rahu or Saturn, Venus in Chitra may seek validation through appearance, fall into superficial attraction patterns, or struggle with dissatisfaction in love due to idealistic expectations. Jupiter in Chitra merges architectural mastery with dharmic vision. When well placed, it creates spiritual designers, moral engineers, or teachers who build frameworks of truth and beauty. Jupiter gives intellectual stability to Chitra's intense drive. If afflicted or placed in Dushtana houses, Jupiter may become preachy, rigid in beliefs, or obsessed with imposing order, diminishing creative flow by clinging to structured ideals or moral perfection. Mars in Chitra operates with fierce control and bold creativity. As the nakshatra lord, Mars here feels at home, expressing through action, discipline, and leadership in aesthetic or technical fields. When well placed, Mars in Chitra produces passionate creators, competitive designers, or magnetic personalities who command attention. If afflicted, it can lead to control issues, ego-driven behavior, or emotionally aggressive attempts to fix what is broken in others or themselves. Saturn in Chitra brings precision, restraint, and structure to the creative impulse. A well-placed Saturn in this nakshatra produces disciplined artists, architects, or engineers who build legacy through detail. However, when afflicted or placed in emotionally sensitive houses, Saturn may create inner rigidity, suppressed creativity, or a perfectionist mindset that leads to emotional frustration and blocked expression. Rahu in Chitra amplifies the desire to be seen as unique, brilliant, or aesthetically superior. When supported by Venus or Mercury, Rahu in this nakshatra gives fame through art, glamour, or innovation. It creates individuals who challenge norms through visual storytelling or bold fashion. But when afflicted, it leads to superficial obsession with looks, manipulative charm, or fractured identity due to external validation dependency. Ketu in Chitra internalizes the architectural power of the nakshatra. The native often feels detached from the need to impress, preferring solitude, minimalist expression, or spiritual perfection. When well placed, Ketu gives intuitive designability, esoteric insight, or healing skills through beauty and energy structures. If afflicted, Ketu here may result in emotional aloofness, inner conflict between beauty and depth, or difficulty connecting emotionally in relationships. Mercury in Chitra blends intellectual agility with aesthetic flair. Supported by benefics, this Mercury gives gifted writers, designers, and communicators who use language and visuals to influence and reform. Chitra's Mars-ruled fire merges with Mercury's wit to create sharp yet elegant expression. If afflicted, especially by Rahu or Saturn, Mercury may become overly critical, sarcastic, or emotionally detached in communication, masking insecurity behind a polished exterior. Interpretation of Chitra Nakshatra, house placement context. When Mars, the ruler of Chitra Nakshatra, is placed in a Kendra 1st, 4th, 7th, 10th, or Kona 1st, 5th, 9th, Chitra's charisma, creative drive, and ability to architect transformation become empowered and socially visible. For example, for Virgo ascendant, if Mars rules the 3rd and 8th houses and is placed in the 10th house, and Moon is in Chitra, the native may rise as a public figure known for visual brilliance, bold action, or professional reform. Chitra's need to shape and beautify reality finds impactful expression through career, status, or structured leadership. If Venus is in Chitra and rules the 2nd and 9th houses, for Libra ascendant, and is placed in the 5th house, Kona, the native becomes an inspired creator, blending tradition and flair through performance, romance, or artistic intelligence. The fifth house enhances Chitra's showmanship and Venus's aesthetic grace, resulting in refined storytellers, educators, or designers who command attention through style, rhythm, and precise execution. When the planetary lord of a Chitra-placed planet is located in a Dushtana house, 6th, 8th, or 12th, the native may struggle with balancing Chitra's drive for external brilliance and the karmic tension of hidden emotional pressure or criticism. For instance, if Mercury is in Chitra and rules the first and 10th houses for Gemini ascendant, but is placed in the 12th house, the native may feel internally scattered, seeking external validation through sharp intellect or aesthetics while facing mental burnout or anxiety in isolation. The push for mastery may become emotionally exhausting without internal grounding. Now consider Jupiter in Chitra for Capricorn ascendant, ruling the 3rd and 12th houses, and placed in the 1st house, Kendra. The native may radiate magnetic wisdom through their body, personality, and speech, embodying Chitra's brilliance in a form that guides, teaches, or inspires. Jupiter's optimism steadies the architectural impulse of Chitra, giving charisma with conviction and visionary creativity that is both structured and uplifting. If Saturn is in Chitra and rules the 4th and 5th houses for Aquarius ascendant and is placed in the 9th house, Kona, the native becomes a serious designer of moral, educational, or philosophical structures. They reform ideologies or traditional models with precision and depth. Chitra's creativity is shaped through disciplined thought and ancestral responsibility. However, without benefic influence, Saturn here may make the native emotionally rigid or critical, struggling to accept imperfection either in others or in themselves. Suppose Rahu is in Chitra for Leo ascendant, and Mars is placed in the 6th house, ruling the 4th and 9th houses. The native may become obsessed with reforming broken systems, beauty ideals, or emotional patterns within family or education. Chitra's flair for dramatization is exaggerated by Rahu's hunger for significance. If supported by Venus or Mercury, this can produce charismatic influencers or aesthetic reformers. If afflicted, it may lead to emotional frustration, arrogance in learning, or toxic comparison dynamics. If Ketu is in Chitra for Aries ascendant and Mars is placed in the 1st house, the native may feel a quiet detachment from outer success, yet possess deep inner mastery over aesthetic expression or creative leadership. Chitra's constructive power becomes internalized. With Ketu and Mars in harmony, the native may become a spiritual architect, healer, or recluse artist, one who creates beauty not for applause, but as an offering or form of discipline. Finally, if the moon is in Chitra for Taurus ascendant and rules the 3rd house, placed in the 11th house, the native expresses emotionally intelligent creativity through community roles, social circles, or audience-based ventures. Chitra here blends heart and precision to serve collective ideals. The person often becomes an admired speaker, planner, or designer in social initiatives. If the moon is afflicted, emotional inconsistency may create fluctuation in group identity or peer-driven self-worth. Interpretation of Dhanishta Nakshatra. When the moon is placed in Dhanishta Nakshatra and supported by benefics like Mars, its ruler, or Jupiter, it fosters a bold, rhythmic, and socially attuned emotional personality. Symbolized by the drum and ruled by Mars, Dhanishta carries the Shakti of abundance through movement and fame. A benefic moon here makes the native emotionally energetic, community-oriented, and naturally expressive in music, rhythm, and leadership. If afflicted, especially by Rahu, Saturn, or Ketu, the moon may become restless, ego-driven, or emotionally hollow despite social recognition. Venus in Dhanishta radiates sensual magnetism, a love of performance, and beauty blended with assertiveness. When placed in Kendra or Kona and supported by Mars or Jupiter, Venus here shines as a refined artist, skilled performer, or emotionally magnetic social connector. Venus blends grace with strength in this nakshatra. If afflicted, however, it can indicate emotional confusion in love, desire for attention without depth, or vanity-driven relationships. Jupiter in Dhanishta enhances the native's ethical performance, spiritual rhythm, and leadership through knowledge. It produces emotionally generous leaders, philanthropists, or guides who influence communities through speech, music, or public works. Jupiter amplifies Dhanishta's prosperity orientation, turning ambition into structured service. When afflicted, however, this placement can cause hypocrisy, emotional preaching, or the pursuit of fame cloaked as morality. Mars, as the ruler, is naturally strong in Dhanishta and gives assertiveness, confidence, and rhythm in action. The native becomes a charismatic leader, often in physical, social, or artistic domains. Mars here makes emotions quick, determined, and expressive. When afflicted, Mars may bring ego battles, impatience, or emotional conflict masked by bravado or performance-driven identity. Saturn in Dhanishta stabilizes the social drive and adds maturity to fame or community roles. The native may lead with discipline and carry a legacy linked to structured movement, like dance, strategy, or rituals. When dignified, this Saturn gives responsible leadership and emotional stamina. If afflicted, it may produce rigid perfectionism, suppressed ambition, or isolation behind a public mask. Rahu in Dhanishta intensifies the hunger for fame, validation, and public recognition. When supported, this can lead to charismatic influencers, entertainers, or powerful orators. Rahu thrives in this nakshatra's extroverted energy. However, if afflicted, Rahu may create shallow popularity, burnout, or identity crises driven by the illusion of applause. Ketu in Dhanishta often shows past life mastery in music, performance, or leadership, but now leans toward internalizing emotional rhythm. Ketu withdraws from the spotlight even when naturally gifted. If well placed, it gives deeply intuitive artists, silent healers, or spiritual performers. If afflicted, Ketu here may cause a rejection of talent, loss of emotional purpose, or subconscious discomfort with visibility. Mercury in Dhanishta combines intellect with performance. These natives are clever, strategic communicators who may use speech, marketing, or writing to captivate audiences. Mercury in Dhanishta can produce emotionally alert speakers, scriptwriters, or digital creators. When afflicted, especially by Rahu or Saturn, it may lead to overcalculated speech, emotional manipulation, or inconsistency in how the native communicates their identity. Interpretation of Dhanishta Nakshatra, house placement context. When Mars, the ruler of Dhanishta Nakshatra, is placed in a Kendra, 4th, 7th, 10th, or Kona, 1st, 5th, 9th, the nakshatra's themes of rhythmic achievement, social reputation, and action-based charisma are strongly expressed. For Aquarius ascendant, if Mars rules the 3rd and 10th houses and is placed in the 10th house and the moon is in Dhanishta, the native becomes a highly driven performer or professional leader. Here, Dhanishta's public vibrancy is amplified by Mars's directional strength, granting fame through action, whether in arts, media, sports, or governance. If Venus is in Dhanishta and rules the 4th and 9th houses, for Capricorn ascendant, and is placed in the 1st house, Kendra, the native brings emotional elegance and magnetic charm to their persona. Dhanishta's blend of movement and visibility makes the native graceful, stylish, and socially poised. When supported, Venus brings fame through aesthetic disciplines or diplomacy. If afflicted, it may lead to superficial relationships, vanity, or pressure to maintain appearances. When a planet in Dhanishta has its ruler placed in a Dushtana house, 6th, 8th, or 12th, the Dhanishta themes of celebration, rhythm, and status can become unstable, emotionally draining, or karmically complex. For instance, if Mercury is in Dhanishta and rules the 2nd and 5th houses, for Taurus ascendant, but Mars is placed in the 6th house, the native may struggle with criticism, performance anxiety, or unstable creative cycles. Still, this also indicates karmic service through speech, learning, or youth mentorship if Mercury is supported. Consider Jupiter in Dhanishta for Leo ascendant, ruling the 5th and 8th houses, and placed in the 9th house, Kona. The native expresses philosophical wisdom through social impact, spiritual teachings, or ethical leadership. Jupiter adds moral stature to Dhanishta's quest for recognition. If afflicted, however, this placement may cause emotional conflicts with belief systems, public controversies, or spiritual materialism. If Saturn is in Dhanishta and rules the 6th and 7th houses, for Cancer ascendant, and is placed in the 12th house, the native may deal with hidden karmas related to marriage, service, or public image. Saturn in this house brings emotional distance or sacrifice behind the scenes. When afflicted, the person may feel socially isolated despite their outward presence. When supported by Mars or Jupiter, however, it creates tireless contributors to institutions, charities, or spiritual movements. Suppose Rahu is in Dhanishta for Aries ascendant, and Mars is placed in the third house. The native becomes a dynamic speaker, self-made performer, or online influencer. Rahu fuels the desire for visibility and status, and with Mars well placed, the native executes this ambition skillfully. When afflicted, this combination can lead to burnout, ego clashes, or over-identification with the audience's applause. If Ketu is in Dhanishta and Mars is in the ninth house for Libra ascendant, the native may carry disinterest in public recognition, instead choosing internal mastery, private excellence, or spiritual detachment. The emotional rhythm becomes introspective. If Mars is strong, the person may serve as a quiet force behind institutions or sacred traditions. If afflicted, Ketu may cause a disconnect from ambition, discomfort with praise, or avoidance of leadership despite inherent capability. Finally, if the moon is in Dhanishta for Scorpio ascendant and rules the ninth house, placed in the fourth house, the native feels emotionally secure through legacy, tradition, and teaching. This is someone who brings cultural rhythm and inherited wisdom into the home. When dignified, they carry a legacy of emotional and spiritual soundness. If afflicted, they may struggle to harmonize their inner emotional life with family duty or public roles, feeling unheard or unacknowledged despite vibrant effort. Interpretation of Mrigashira Nakshatra. When the moon is placed in Mrigashira Nakshatra and supported by benefics like Jupiter or Venus, it gives a curious, emotionally adaptive nature and a charming intellectual presence. Ruled by Mars, yet carrying a soft, searching essence, Mrigashira natives exhibit emotional restlessness paired with a desire to explore beauty, ideas, and relationships. A benefic moon here creates poetic thinkers or intuitive communicators. However, if afflicted, say by Rahu, Saturn, or Ketu, the emotional mind becomes fragmented, overly suspicious, or lost in unending searches for fulfillment. Venus in Mrigashira combines sensual grace with curiosity and charm. When well placed, especially in a trinal or angular house and supported by benefics, Venus becomes a magnet for artistic pursuits, romantic expression, and aesthetic exploration. The native might be involved in design, dance, or anything requiring rhythmic beauty. But if Venus is afflicted by Saturn or Mars, it can lead to unstable relationships, flirtation without depth, or a lack of emotional anchoring due to chronic dissatisfaction. Jupiter in Mrigashira brings philosophical curiosity and a restless drive for higher truth. Well-placed Jupiter, particularly in Kendra or Kona, grants the native deep intellectual hunger, making them skilled educators, seekers, or cultural mediators. When Jupiter is in a Dushtana or under malefic influence, however, Mrigashira's search can become intellectual pride, belief in stability, or spiritual detachment lacking grounding. Such natives may wander through dogmas without forming a rooted worldview. Mars, as Mrigashira's ruler, expresses differently here than in its typical aggressive tone. In Mrigashira, Mars becomes the seeker, less overtly dominant, more mentally agile. Well-placed Mars, especially in 1st, 10th, or 5th, gives dynamic explorers, strategic thinkers, or technical experts. But afflicted Mars here may generate impatience, argumentative nature, or superficial action. When Mars is conjunct Rahu or placed in the 8th, it may create suspicion or unresolved anger disguised beneath wit. Saturn in Mrigashira slows the native's search and makes it more deliberate. When placed well and aspected by benefics, Saturn gives focused researchers, philosophers, or those who explore life through delayed but deep maturity. However, Saturn's natural coldness clashes with Mrigashira's airy and mentally playful nature. When afflicted or placed in Dhanishta houses, it may lead to anxiety, isolation in relationships, or emotional dryness masked under overthinking or sarcasm. Rahu in Mrigashira amplifies curiosity into obsession. When placed in trinal or angular houses and supported by Mercury or Jupiter, this can produce technological inventors, media experts, or hyper-adaptable professionals. However, in Dhanishta houses, or with malefic influence, Rahu distorts perception, leading to deceit, seductive manipulation, or unstable romantic and intellectual patterns. Mrigashira's deer-like nature here gets lost in illusions or fantasy chasing. Ketu in Mrigashira indicates karmic detachment from relationships or mental clarity. It produces acute observation and deep perception, particularly when conjoined or aspected by Jupiter. These natives may be researchers, psychologists, or mystics who have little interest in mundane routines. However, afflicted Ketu here may cause difficulty in forming long-term bonds, scattered interests, or reclusive tendencies in speech and emotions. Their search is inward, often bypassing the social. Mercury in Mrigashira thrives with support from benefics. It makes for articulate speakers, witty writers, and agile minds. When placed in trines or kendras and connected with Venus or Jupiter, the native can be a brilliant communicator, capable of weaving emotional tone with mental precision. But afflicted Mercury, especially under Saturn or Rahu influence, may generate nervousness, inconsistency in speech, or dishonest tendencies masked under charm and clever language. Interpretation of Mrigashira Nakshatra, house placement context. When Mars, the ruler of Mrigashira Nakshatra, is placed in a kendra, 1st, 4th, 7th, or kona, 1st, 5th, 9th, Mrigashira's innate curiosity, flexibility, and intellectual charm gain direction and discipline. For instance, for Aries ascendant, if Mars rules the 1st and 8th houses and is placed in the 10th house, and Moon is in Mrigashira, the native becomes an intellectually driven leader with an investigative edge. Mrigashira's restless search finds practical expression in career, media, or scientific exploration, especially when supported by benefics. If Venus is placed in Mrigashira and rules the 6th and 11th houses, for Virgo ascendant, and Venus is in the 5th house, Kona, the native expresses their artistic or sensual curiosity through romantic adventures, creative pursuits, or speculative thinking. Venus in Mrigashira in a Kona house generates refined aesthetics combined with clever communication, often producing content creators, artists, or diplomats with quick emotional adaptability. When a Mrigashira-linked planet's lord is placed in a Dushtana, 6th, 8th, or 12th house, the nakshatra's searching quality can turn into inner fragmentation, dissatisfaction, or hidden conflict. For example, if Mercury is in Mrigashira and rules the 2nd and 5th houses, for Taurus ascendant, and is placed in the 12th house, the native may struggle with expressive suppression, unconscious escapism, or ungrounded intellectual fantasies. Mrigashira's sharp wit may be internalized, resulting in anxiety or self-isolation unless balanced by spiritual or creative outlets. Suppose Saturn is in Mrigashira for Leo ascendant, ruling 6th and 7th houses, and placed in the 9th house, Kona. While Saturn brings restraint, the 9th house gives philosophical and ethical structure to Mrigashira's mental wandering. This combination may produce a diligent academic, spiritual reformer, or justice-oriented thinker who slowly and steadily constructs a belief system through disciplined seeking. Now consider Jupiter in Mrigashira for Aquarius ascendant, ruling the 2nd and 11th houses, and placed in the 4th house, Kendra. The native may express Mrigashira's intellectual drive through family values, homeland, or emotional teaching. Jupiter adds generosity and grounded ethics, while the 4th house nurtures the inner seeker. This placement often results in educators, counselors, or home-based communicators who shape values through intuitive logic. If Rahu is in Mrigashira and Mars, Nakshatra Lord, is placed in the 6th house for Gemini ascendant, ruling 11th and 6th, the native may have an intense obsession with competition, debates, or proving intellectual superiority. The 6th house distorts Mrigashira's curiosity into comparison, rivalry, or critique-based anxiety. If benefics aspect or support Mars, the native may use this sharpness constructively in law, research, or service-based roles. If the moon is placed in Mrigashira and rules the 9th house, for Scorpio ascendant, and is placed in the 1st house, the individual becomes emotionally expressive, intellectually spontaneous, and exploratory. Mrigashira here creates a persona of charm, youthful curiosity, and mental freshness, especially in public interactions. The native may thrive as a speaker, traveler, or counselor with a constantly evolving worldview rooted in emotional intelligence. Lastly, Ketu in Mrigashira for Pisces ascendant, with Mars placed in the 8th house, suggests a past life search for truth that now needs inner resolution. Mrigashira's energy is turned inward, possibly leading to metaphysical research, secluded knowledge, or silent transformation. But if Mars were instead placed in the 5th house, that energy would support intellectual mentorship, creative discipline, or dynamic education. Ketu's detachment and Mrigashira's agility combine into a unique seeker of subtle truths.